Former Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi of California announced she will run again for re-election in 2024. The 83-year-old will run as Democrats try to regain control of the House, where Republicans have a very slim majority. Pelosi made history as the first woman to become Speaker in 2007. And Senate Minority Leader Republican Mitch McConnell is back at work on Capitol Hill, but there are few answers after his recent episodes of freezing up in public. This week, the attending physician to Congress says 81-year-old McConnell did not show any evidence of a stroke or seizure disorder.
What Dr. Monahan's report addressed was concerns people might have that some things that happened to me did happen. Well, they didn't. And it's really, I have nothing to add to that. I think you pretty well covered the subject. I'm going to finish my term as leader, and I'm going to finish my Senate term.
Well, Senator McConnell is not the only major figure in the nation's capital facing difficult questions about health and age. 90-year-old Senator Dianne Feinstein has also been in the news with health concerns, as well as Congressman John Fetterman. I want to bring in our panel this morning. Jack Kalavritinos is a Republican strategist and former official in the Bush and Trump administrations, and Nicole Brenner-Schmitz is a Democratic strategist and political consultant with NBS Strategies. Thank you, both of you, for being here today. I want to start with just this fallout and talk about age and politics. How important is this, and how big is it playing in both camps? Jack, I'll give it to you first.
I mean, it is very important. President Biden is 80, and I was looking it up. President Reagan was 76 when he ran for re-election. People were talking about his age, but 80 is, far beyond the average life expectancy, and he's already had several on-air issues, including the latest one with the Medal of Honor winner, where he left the ceremony early. I think with Senator McConnell, people are asking questions, and we all feel badly when we see him freeze up like that. You just mentioned Nancy Pelosi being 83, so I mean, I think it's time for a newer generation, and I think some of these issues are important.
Can Democrats politicize, say, Senator McConnell's freezing up when you have people asking questions about President Biden? You've got Dianne Feinstein and her issues, John Fetterman, who's younger but certainly having health issues as well. Can this be politicized?
I don't think Democrats are trying to politicize it. There are questions being asked. It's not the Democratic Party that is the only one asking them. There are a lot of questions about age. But what we do know is a couple things. One, the health issues, as you mentioned, are not starting at a particular age. We can't put a number on when people are allowed to run or not run. This is democracy. It's not perfect, but the electors and the people do get to take a vote. And if they feel someone is now not cognitively there, they can take that step. But the other thing we know is that President Biden is the only person that by law we have to know about his health. That is something that is ingrained, and we know from his physician, and we get those reports. So President Biden is the one we can feel confident that we know what is going on with his health.
Jack, I want to bring you in. I know you're saying something here. Let me just add this. I know that Nikki Haley, who is running for president, has said that she thinks there ought to be some sort of a cognitive test for people running, especially if they're over 75. I want to put that to you, and then also asking you, do Republicans support McConnell given that he's had these health issues?
Well, I mean, you mentioned tests, and he does see his physician, and that gets released. But there has not been a cognitive test. And, having family members who are in assisted living and living this, there are lots of indications that perhaps it's time for President Biden to step aside. There's a CNN poll that Kellyanne Conway said is the most dramatic set of polling results she's ever seen about an incumbent. And it showed that ever since he was elected, a majority of Democrats have said that they want another Democrat to run for re-election. In fact, right now, it's at 60% of Democrats want someone else.
So I guess this is an issue that's obviously going to be discussed and keep coming up. But I want to move on because there's so much more to talk about now. Full Congress will be back in session this week. What are the chances a government shutdown can be avoided? I mean, you've got a deadline looming yet again. I'll start with you.
I mean, it feels day to day. It varies on how positive Capitol Hill feels about this. What's really going to have to happen is McCarthy is going to have to make sure his caucus will pass some sort of CR that is in agreement with the Democrats, because there's no way they're going to get all of the appropriations bills done. But also, timed with this, you've got an FAA reauthorization that comes up at the end of the month. You've got an agriculture bill that comes up. The Senate has nominations that need to get through. So there is a lot of work to be done in a very finite amount of time in September. So a CR is the best chance.
So, Jack, how likely is that? I mean, you've got a fractured Republican Party in the House that, is basically holding Kevin McCarthy by the neck, saying you've got to do what we want, otherwise you're out of here. How likely is that he can coalesce them and that we can get something done here?
I actually, even though we disagree on a lot, I think I agree with what you just said and your analysis, and it is very tight, as you said. This is not the same old where we have these budget fights and there's a looming shutdown, because we actually have budget bills going through the process, and that's something that we haven't seen in recent years. So it's actually a good thing that committees are holding hearings, that the American people are getting a chance, if they wish to look at these different spending bills. But we're now coming to the brink, and I think that a CR is probable. All
right, let's move on to the presidential election and the presidential candidates. Jack, what's your take on who's making headway now, or who's kind of gaining momentum?
I think about a movie I just saw, and maybe everyone else has seen it, but Secretariat. And people don't realize that Secretariat came from behind at the Preakness, at the Kentucky Derby, and then won by 31 lengths. I think Nikki Haley right now is making the biggest move, and that's even before the second debate. But everyone is just sort of in the far distance to Trump. The fact is, though, is that you never know what can happen, and anything can happen, whether it's with President Biden and his age or whether it's with President Trump.
And what do you make of the presidential candidates, at least those on the Republican side? Of course, on the Democratic side, Biden, the nominee, presumably. But, there are questions there, as we said earlier.
I mean, look, the Democratic Party is set to nominate President Biden. This is the power of incumbency. There's not a real threat to this. There's not a real drive for anything else. The party is behind him. We have an apparatus in America where having the party behind you means a lot. Again, Donald Trump seems to have it. It seems like Republicans are taking some different tactics. It feels like Ramaswamy is running as a Trump in case he's unable. He really seems to want to be like running on the Trump playbook. He's the outsider. He's a businessman. He gives the middle finger to everybody on the left. Right. Then you've got Nikki Haley, who's actually running, and she's one of the few that are drawing distinctions between the Republican Party and Trump and herself. She really leans into they earmark stuff. They're big spenders as well. It's not just the Democratic Party that's doing that. So she's trying to draw some criticisms. And then I think you've got some people who are running to make a national name for themselves, the mayor of Miami, and some people who might just be trying to be the next number two in a Tim Scott, the nice vice presidency.
20 seconds. What does President Biden have to do to really garner the support of Democrats?
He has the support of Democrats. He's going to have the support of Democrats. He definitely is running on what he's passed, the infrastructure bill, the jobs. He's going to have the support of the Democrats.
Jack, I'll let you have the last word.
I don't usually cite CNN, but they are showing 60% of Democrats don't want him. And what about RFK? And why is it that RFK Jr. is being pushed to the side in a non-democratic way during this primary?
He's running on Republican values.
Well, let's have a fair fight and let there be a primary fight between a challenger to the incumbent.
I love when our panel argues. That means we've got a hot topic here. We'll have to have you two back. Thank you so much for your expertise, Jack and Nicole. Appreciate you guys this morning.
Thank you.
Hail to the Commanders.
I'm wearing my burgundy Ford. I'm heading to the game. You too?
Yep,
All right,
I'll be
see you there.